Okay, so what's going on? I appreciate everybody for coming through. Let me know you can hear me. Let me know what part of the country that you're coming out of. And what we're going to talk about today is why the economy of the South will not rise again. And so, once again, just to give you a heads up for anybody that's listening or watching, we're not going to be talking about like a fight or anything of that nature. I really don't do that. And I don't really think you're really into fights like that. Outside of maybe professional fights, you're not going to really see me talking a lot about people fighting, right? So anybody that thought that's what the goal of the conversation was going to be, you could jump off right now because we're not going to be going into that. What we're going to be kind of talking about is how people's attitudes and perspectives will harm them or not allow them to grow while the rest of the world is moving forward, right? And we're going to bring in some economic data. We're going to bring in some demographic data, and we're going to kind of discuss that, right? Because we're talking about the Southeast region. Now, to be very honest with you, one of the healthiest regions in the country currently right now today is the Southeast. That's just a fact. A lot of that has to do with the economic situation that we've been in for the past 2 to 3 years. We've had a large demographic push to the Southeast over the past 2 to 3 years, and we've had a lot of stimulus money coming to the economy. That's essentially helped everybody out, made consumers a lot more stable, made people more enthusiastic about buying. And that's something that we're going to see the presidential administration run on. We're at the lowest unemployment rate probably in 25, 30 years. So we're talking about the Southeast, and we're talking about, in this specific example, the state of Alabama. The state of Alabama is doing relatively well from an economic standpoint. And one of the reasons is because of how much money has been pushed into the economy over the past 2 to 3 years. Historically low unemployment rate. They're a relatively large manufacturing hub. So Alabama, Georgia, Florida, they have a lot going for themselves right now. Okay. And that's something that we're going to see the administration run off of. So what I want people to really understand is that you're going to see demographic changes in this country over the next 10 to 15 years, but some even as early as 2030. And those demographic changes are going to kind of shape how things are going to go in America. And a lot of people that are invested in the old way of doing things, right? They're running these old programs. That's not going to work for you because you're going to be out of position for the new game. Let me give an example. So like there was a time in professional sports, let's say football, where as a defender, you could spear people. And what I mean by spear people, what I mean is that you could use your helmet to strike people and you didn't even try to make a tackle. You was just trying to use your helmet to strike people. And what happened was they outlawed that. And so people had to change how they played ball. Then they created rules to where there used to be a rule when I was a kid to where you could have 3 steps and hit the quarterback, right? And a lot of quarterbacks got hurt because of that. And as they started to put more money into quarterbacks, they got rid of that rule and said you can no longer take 3 steps and hit a quarterback. They had another rule to where if you grab the quarterback, they will blow the whistle because they didn't want you to slam the guy to the ground because they didn't want you to hurt him because they was paying him so much money. So if you tried to play ball the old ways, what would happen was they would just keep finding you or they would suspend you till it made no more sense to have you on the team and you'd be out of the game because the rules of the game and the way they were playing ball was changing. And what we're seeing in America is that the way this America system is going to work in the future is changing, but a lot of people are still playing an old game. And the problem is that old game's not going to work for you anymore because nobody's going to be playing that game except you. And so that's something that is that I want people to really kind of understand is that there's going to be massive demographic changes in America starting to really hit 2030, but you're already seeing them now. If you go study the state of Texas, they said by a certain year, within like the next 10 to 15 years, the majority of people inside Texas are going to be Hispanics. They're not even going to be Anglos. They're definitely not going to be blacks. They're going to be Hispanics. Well, that makes sense because of the region of the country that they're in. Therefore, you're seeing these major demographic changes come across America that are going to be what's going to impact your ability to really survive in this environment. But a lot of people are stuck in playing old games, right? And you can win that game, but it's not going to matter because winning that game doesn't mean as much as it means in 25, 30 years as it meant maybe 25, 40 years ago. And I think that's what a lot of people are invested in. And one of the things that you see in the Southeast is a lot of people are invested in playing old games, right? That might have gotten them some capital. When I say capital, I mean, might have gotten them an advantage 50, 60 years ago, but they're not really going to get you an advantage anymore now because people are playing a totally different game. And let me kind of give you an understanding of what I'm talking about. So really quickly, the sponsor of the show is www.thehighestpaid.online. We're currently doing a sale for the month of August. It's going to be 15% off with the code AUG15. The sale's going to end on 8/29. Don't hit me up on 8/30 and say, hey, man, did I miss the sale? Yeah, you missed it because I told you all month the sale's going to end on 8/29. So I want to encourage you to take advantage of that and move forward, and you can get a better understanding and more what we're kind of talking about on this particular video. Okay, so let's go to this demographic talking point. So this is from the census at 2020 to 2060. Population projections from 2020 to 2060. So really quickly, later that decade, by 2034, we project that older adults will outnumber children for the first time in U.S. history. The year 2030 marks another demographic first for the United States. Beginning that year, because of population aging, immigration is projected to overtake natural increase to excess of births over death as a primary driver of population growth for the country, right? So as population ages, the number of deaths is projected to rise substantially, which will slow the country's natural growth. As a result, net internal migration is projected to overtake natural increase, even as levels of migration are projected to remain relatively flat. So these three demographic milestones are projected to make 2030s a transformative decade for the U.S. population, right? By 2030, the U.S. population is projected to grow slowly, age considerably, and to become more racially and ethnically diverse, right? Population is going to grow by 79 million people by 2060. And here's another one. Beginning in 2030, net international migration is expected to overtake natural increase as a driver of population growth in the United States because of population aging. That year, the U.S. is projected to add 1 million people by natural increase, but the number of births minus deaths, but 1.1 million through net and international migration. So they're going to add 1 million people by natural increase. That means more births than deaths, but 1.1 million. Because of the number of deaths is projected to rise in 2060, the U.S. population is projected to add about 500,000 people by natural increase, whereas by net international migration is expected to add more than twice that number, 1.1 million to the population. So what they're saying is by 2060, you're going to have 500,000 people added by birth, right? But by net international migration, you're going to add 1.1 million. Now, the question you want to ask yourself is where are these people going to be coming from? Because we understand, and we talked about in earlier videos of people that actually follow the channel, the majority of American immigrants aren't coming from fair-skinned countries. People in Sweden, Denmark, other countries that are relatively well-off, what we consider first world countries that are fair-skinned people, they're not looking to migrate to the United States. So the United States drives the majority of their migration from certain parts of the world, right? They're telling us by these particular dates that net international migration is going to outnumber births. It's going to be it's going to be a gradual move to where it's going to outnumber it almost 2 to 1. Okay. And I think a lot of the people that are currently in this country, they don't realize that they're going to be essentially outnumbered through migration, right? Regardless of what they do, because the country needs labor and it needs new blood. And so if you're playing an old game and everything is shifting around you, even if you win that game, it's not going to matter because you're going to look up and everything's going to be different around you because you're playing an old game in a new setup, right? So this country has always had migration movements. That's never going to change. And this country needs new people because what America's really trying to do is it's trying to attract labor, cheap labor, and it's also trying to attract the best and the brightest from other parts of the world that can help us be competitive. But what we're seeing, and we talked about before, is that people in a lot of fair-skinned countries don't want to really immigrate to the United States because they have what they have already inside their country. So people in Sweden or people in the Baltic states, even people in places like Russia, they're not really looking to come to the U.S., right? So the U.S. at one time lowered their immigration standards and brought a lot of Italians, a lot of Irish, a lot of Eastern Europeans in, right? They're already here. Those people now are not necessarily looking to come to the United States, even though the narrative is that everybody wants to come to the U.S. It's not necessarily true. A lot of people don't want to come here. The people that are going to be coming here are not going to be fair-skinned people for the majority because the labor is not going to be fair-skinned, right? And so people in the Southeast that are playing this old game, it's not going to work for you because why? Nobody's going to be playing that game with you. They're going to be playing the game of ownership. They're going to be playing the game of economic groups. They're going to be playing the game of securing resources for their group. And a lot of people are going to be still playing the game of, you know, I got a problem with this person, and so I'm going to focus on that person and letting politicians rile them up over these certain groups, while behind closed doors, that politician is just 100% about how much money he can make or how much money she can make. But they know that we got a lot of people stuck on this format, which is not going to work for them. Let me go to another demographic change. So what we're talking about right now is demographic changes. So here's from the Congressional Budget Office. If you look at this particular graph, we don't have to go into the PDF. It's showing you population growth, right? And it's showing you net immigration. And you're seeing that as we get closer to 2051, that we talked about before, as we get closer to 2060, net immigration grows up as births minus death starts to go down, right? So population growth starts to go down, net immigration starts to go up, but births minus death starts to go down, which means that we have more people dying than being born inside the country. And they can try to manipulate whatever kind of legal system or legal structure that they want. They can't change the fact that a lot of people do not want to have as many children as they had 25, 30 years ago. It's just a reality. So the only way to keep our system going, because to support our entitlements, we need an X number of people that don't utilize the entitlement to people that need the entitlement. That's how the system was set up. So we have to keep bringing people in that can pay and support the tax base to support our entitlements, support our military, things of that nature, or else this system doesn't work. So the people got to come from somewhere. And so if you don't birth them, then they got to bring them in. Right? And then those people are going to come over here. They're going to be competing for resources. They're going to be competing for jobs. They're going to be building their economic networks. And if you playing an old game that's not going to work for you, right? Well, then you're just going to be out of position. So what I want people to really understand is that we're in a transition from a demographic standpoint. The Black population, even though it's younger, is not going to increase as much as everybody else's population. The Anglo population is going to start decreasing. So what they're going to do is they're going to run the old game on us, which is worry about what Anglos is doing and then tell Anglos to worry about what Black folks is doing. Right? But in reality, the country is going to be essentially, I don't want to use the incorrect term, but the country is going to be swamped. I would say swamped is a proper term, by Hispanics and a bunch of Asians. That's who's coming over here, right? Because they want the Asians because they want their specialized knowledge, and they want the Hispanics because they want their labor. And you see this now where I'm living at in Cobb County. I left here in 2019 to go to Florida. I came back in 2022 from Texas, right? There's more Hispanics here than I've ever seen in my life. I lived in this same area for 6 years, from 2012 to 2019, if that's 6 years. If not, my math is wrong. You saw Hispanics, but not like you're seeing now. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. Because why? They need their labor. They need the Asians for their specialized knowledge, whether that be mathematics, text, engineering, or whatever. And so what you got to understand is that they're not telling you that that's what's going on while they're creating. So they're telling, you know, we're against immigration. This guy, I want to put the military at the border, which is, they never let them do that because the Congress won't allow you to put troops inside the United States like that. But they're creating this narrative that we're against the immigration. No, they're not. They need the labor. They need the labor, and they need the specialized knowledge. The United States has one of the hardest visa systems that we would say for first world countries. Has one of the most difficult visa systems to navigate for first world countries. But the United States needs that specialized knowledge to propel this country into the future. It needs it. So other countries are doing a better job at attracting other people from other lands to come in with their specialized knowledge because their entry system is not as difficult as ours. I'm talking about if you come here legally. I'm not talking about if you just show up. So the United States is in competition with other countries to bring in these type of people. They need the labor, they need that cheap labor, and they need that specialized knowledge, right? So those groups are going to continue to keep going up over time. They're not going anywhere, right? And you can go Google Texas. They did their own study telling you about this particular year, the majority of people in Texas are going to be Hispanic. So they've already projected that Anglo is going to be a minority and Black people definitely going to be a minority in the state of Texas, right? So that's what I want you to understand, is that there's a demographic change that's happening in this country because it supports capital. And what supports capital in this country is what's going to take place. And the politician's job is to distract you from what's really going on. There's nobody's trying to stop immigration. It's not going to happen, right? They had Trump in office, and I'm not trying to give you a political message. I'm just trying to get you to understand what's really going on. Trump ran on building the wall. When he got elected, he had a Republican Senate and Congress. I'm sorry, it's a Congress and Senate, if that's correct. And they never passed the legislation to fund building the wall. Because why? There's not a goal to stop immigration here. There's never been one. There's never going to be one, right? This country needs labor, and it has to get it from somewhere. So that's what people have to understand. If somebody comes to you and says, I'm going to do these things, and all these little charades with DeSantis and the governor, where they taking these particular immigrants and send them to other states, those are charades, right? We can't support Florida real estate construction without immigrant labor. And instead of creating standards to make people verify, right, they do charades because they understand Florida doesn't have a construction, especially a commercial construction industry, if we don't have immigrants. It doesn't exist. And Florida is very heavily invested in commercial real estate, right? Same thing with our agriculture footprint. Florida can't do agriculture the way we do it without immigrants. So instead of creating a process to make sure people are verified, they do charades because they know people buy into charades, right? It's entertaining to them. It makes them feel good. But there's nothing behind it because capital demands this particular demographic change. Let's go to the next one, right? Well, let's talk about old attitudes. So in the South, and you see what I call a lot of old attitudes. Now, what do I mean by that? For years, the South ran on this attitude of Anglo men are top dog, right? And everybody else is inferior, right? Because they needed to get Anglo men to invest in building up the South, right? And if you really study stuff like the Civil War, when they started the Civil War, they had a rule in the Confederacy to where if you owned 20 or more slaves, you didn't even have to fight, right? So if you was a well-to-do landowner with slaves, you didn't even have to fight in the war. You was exempt because it was never about the rich and the wealthy, right, losing what they had in the war. It was about taking their poorest part of the population and getting them to fight, okay? And towards the end of the war, they was fighting with teenagers because they started running out of people because they was in a war of attrition with the North. But people were so invested in this attitude that what the North wants to do is to make a black man equal to me. So I'm willing to fight that to try to stop that from happening. That once they got a year into the war, right, and they realized that they didn't have the materials and the resources, they started to lose a lot of their army, right? A lot of these people that tell you that they have family that fought in the war won't tell you that a lot of their people deserted. Because after a year of fighting, they realized that they really weren't prepared to actually fight a long-term war, right? So what they did was they deserted and went back home to try to help out on the farm because during the Civil War, the majority of white people in the South was also working agriculture. It wasn't just black folks. The whole South was built on working the land. So if you're not there, you're fighting, you can't work the land. And at that time, without advanced technology and machinery, you need men on the farm because they can do the most labor. But they bought into this particular attitude of you are better than everybody else, but most importantly, black men. And that attitude has stayed in the South for a very long period of time. And so what people do is they just keep playing off that attitude because they know that that exists. And people buy into it, right? One of the reasons why I didn't want to go to Gainesville for college, I could have went to Gainesville. I got accepted into UCLA. I know I could have got into Gainesville, and I was an out-of-state student. So I know I had the grades to go to Gainesville. But the reason why I didn't want to go to Gainesville because it's a podunk, it's a two-horse town in Florida, right? And the Anglos in Gainesville, they're just very arrogant. They think they're better than everybody. And I wasn't raised in Gainesville, so I'm not going to go there and put up with that attitude, right? Because I know the attitude that we saw with those people on the dock, I've seen that attitude before. You see that in Gainesville. You see a little bit of it in Tallahassee, but you see a lot of it in Gainesville. You see that in certain areas where you see that in Tuscaloosa. You see that in certain areas where these people, everything about them is invested in the idea that I'm better than somebody else because that's how they was raised. They was raised to believe that type of stuff. And they even got black people believing that type of stuff because they get on the internet and they say this type of stuff to people on the internet. So this is a very deep programming. And so the problem with that old attitude is that it's a distraction from what you need to be doing because the world is changing around everybody. So buying into an old attitude that was created to try to support chattel slavery and to keep an institution of chattel slavery going, it's not going to work for you in 2023, 2024, because they're bringing people over here that don't have any connection to that. And they're not tripping on that. They tripping on building themselves up, right? They tripping on building out their networks, right? They're not tripping on that. So you can't even appeal to those people with that type of stuff because they're not focused on that. They weren't about their business. They weren't about making sure their kids go to good schools. They're not tripping on that old stuff. And so one of the biggest challenges, the reason why pre-pandemic, because the pandemic put a booster rocket under everybody's economy, but pre-pandemic, the reason why certain areas of the South were so underdeveloped is because it's easy to persuade and influence Anglos with that old attitude that any change is you being brought down to the level of a black man. And so they're going to resist that wholeheartedly. So anytime you want to get their votes, you want to get their support, you just tell them, hey, they doing this, and you just use your codified language. They trying to either bring you down to the level of a black man, they trying to bring black men up to the level of yourself. And that's this whole system has been built on that you're better than these people, right? So that's what you want to understand. That old attitude is bad for business. The reason why there's manufacturing in the South right now today is because the South historically has been anti-organized labor, right? They're seeing that UPS, they talking about UPS drivers going to make $170,000 a year, right? Most corporations don't want to have nothing to do with that, okay? The reason why there's so much manufacturing in the South, Rivian, I know other people that do car manufacturing out there in not Austell, not Alpharetta, Ackworth, is because the South is primarily against organized labor. Unless you police a fire, they don't want to do organized labor. So they do manufacturing down here because they don't have to worry about dealing with a union. But I want you to understand something. If you don't do what them people want you to do, they'll take that manufacturing and go somewhere else because they always got somewhere else they can take it to. They can take it down to Mexico. So if you don't have an environment that supports what they want, they'll just move and go another place. And then it's going to be a detriment to your economy. And what has given Atlanta and Miami an advantage over other cities in the South is because what they did a long time ago is they said, we're going to put business first and we're going to leave everything else alone. Is there racism in them cities? Yeah, definitely. If you go to Miami, there's a lot of racism. But one thing about white Cubans in Miami, the reason why they was able to outcompete Anglos in their own state, in their own country when they started coming over here is because what they was doing in Cuba was doing business, and they came over here to Florida and they was competing with a bunch of Anglos who didn't know how to do business, and they just did business better than them. They did government better than them, and they just ran those people out of Florida. They repealed the English-only law in Dade County, in the city of Miami, so they could speak Spanish to each other all the time. They could put buildings and things in Spanish, and they ran those people out because, why? They did business better than them, right? And it was a long process, a 35, 40-year process, but they finally got them because they stayed focused on what? Doing that business. And the white people was focused on, waving American flags and worrying about somebody speaking Spanish, instead of trying to figure out how to not lose everything to these folks because they look just like you, but they're not like you. So that's what I want you to understand is that until they kind of get rid of a lot of these old attitudes, it's going to put them in a position to where it can hurt their success. Let me show you something real quick. Here is a map of the Gulf Coast. There's no reason why they haven't developed this Gulf Coast. The reason why they haven't developed this Gulf Coast is because of attitudes. They don't understand the potential of the area. They cool living like they was living 45, 50 years ago. So instead of them taking the Gulf Coast and just lining that thing up with hotels and casinos and resorts, and let's get this money, because to be real with you, Gulf beaches are really better beaches than the East Coast beaches. East Coast beaches are terrible compared to the Gulf Coast beaches. But most people never been to the Gulf Coast because all the tourists is on the East Coast, right? But because of old attitudes about a lot of things, about them not liking to deal with other people that don't look just like them, about them wanting to try to feel like they're keeping people in their place, they can't attract the business activity to them because they won't be hospitable to those people when they come in to spend their money. And they don't know how to just take the money, smile, and talk about those people in your house behind closed doors. They want to do it in your face, and that's the problem. So there's a lot of development in this particular area that could be going on that's not going on because of old attitudes, right? There's literally millions of dollars of development that could be going on here that's not because of old attitudes, right? So once we get farther and farther out of this pandemic, we're not going to stay at 3.5% unemployment forever. Eventually, that unemployment level is going to go back up. You're going to see the areas that are least prepared for these changes, they're going to be the most negatively impacted, right? Because everybody's been gravy trained in the past 3 to 4 years. You're just now starting to see a little bit of stress in the economy. But let's get 2 to 3 years outside of this, right? And that gravy train is going to be over and everything's going to go back to what it was. And you're going to start seeing that the economies on the state level that don't have the ability to attract the talent, to attract the capital, and to really compete, they're going to get left while everybody's moving forward, right? This guy, DeSantis, he may have a real short run in Florida because he had a lot of things in his favor, and he misplayed it trying to do what appeal to them old attitudes. That don't have nothing to do with business, right? But he's trying to appeal to those old attitudes that he thinks is going to help him get elected because he understands as a politician, I'm not here to tell you what's really going on. I'm here to feed a narrative back to you that you already think. So he had a lot of good capital built business-wise that he may mess up because he's appealing to those old attitudes instead of putting business first and moving forward with business, right? Because that's why Miami is what it is. So I know he's not talking about grooming when you can go to Miami, and Miami is one of the pornography capitals of the whole world. So I don't understand this grooming argument. But see, he knows people don't know that, right? They watch the porn but don't know where it's coming from, but it's coming out of Miami, right? So he understands his audience. They got an old attitude, so he plays into that. So that's one of the things that's going to hold things back. Right now, everything's looking good. But things aren't going to stay the way they are forever. And so when you're looking at your economic situation, when you're trying to plan an economic situation, you always got to be thinking 25, 30, 40 years out. You can't be thinking because we're making money this year, it means we're going to make money 5 years from now. No, that's not how this stuff works. Let's go to the next one before we get up on out of here. So capital is loyal to a profit and not a region, right? Again, the reason why manufacturing is in the Southeast, because we don't do organized labor. So they don't have to worry about a group of people organizing and saying, well, we won't work unless you pay us X amount of money. They don't have to worry about that. So a lot of Southeast states have been getting a lot of really good manufacturing, especially with cars and trucks and things of that nature. But capital is loyal to a profit, not a region, right? So if they don't like what's going on in your particular area, what they'll do is just go somewhere else, right? It's the reason why Musk went to Texas, but he didn't go to Alabama. He didn't go to Georgia, right? He didn't go to Florida, even though everybody made it seem like everybody was moving to Florida. He went to Texas because why? They sat down with him and they cut him a deal that made sense. And it makes sense for him to be in the area that he's currently in right now, right? Because he's closer to Monterey. So capital is going to be lower to a profit and not a region. If the situation in Texas don't make sense, they'll take Tesla and move that somewhere else. Because why? We know we can get a deal for what we're doing because we're bringing in X amount of jobs and we're going to have this X amount of positive economic impact. And so what I want people to understand is that the regions in the South that are really thriving, the cities in the South that are really thriving, is the ones that have people that understand is that capital is going to be lower to profit and not a region. If it don't work here, it'll work somewhere else. So we'll just go there, right? And so you should never take this type of stuff for granted. And you should look to try to figure out, is the people in my area, are they developing people for the future? Or are they trying to keep everybody stuck in the past? Because that's what keeps them in position. Tommy Tuberville, a senator of Alabama, he's worth almost $20 million. That's not a negative thing. That's a good thing for him and his family. But he's not talking about what allows him to make money. He plays the markets. He never going to leave Congress because he gets insider information, allegedly. So he allegedly gets insider information that allows him to trade stocks way better. So all he got to do is convince the people of Alabama that I'm going to protect you from being equal to black people. And he can stay in the information stream and keep getting that inside information and keep making that money. But he's never going to really tell them what's really going on because, one, they don't want to hear it because they got an old attitude. And two, he don't want to lose his position. Right? But what I want you to understand is that if the people in your particular area are not talking about developing people so they can be competitive for the future, your area is going to be on a downturn because more and more people are going to keep coming into this country and they're going to keep attracting talent, right, that specialize in particular areas that you may not have, also because they're going to work cheaper than you. And that's who you're going to be competing with. Then you may be in an area of the country where they don't do organized labor. So essentially you're negotiating as an independent contractor for every job that you get. If you and your people are not up to speed, you're not going to be able to get a lot of success. And they're never going to stop bringing people over here. Don't let any politician tell you that they're going to stop immigration. Capital wants immigration. So that's what's going to happen. There is no politician that can stand up to capital. That's not how this game is played, right? That's like saying I can put one person with a ball and I can take 11 people on defense and that one person can get a touchdown. No, they can't. They can't outrun 11 people. So it doesn't matter what they say. No politician is going to stop immigration because they had a perfect chance to build that wall and they wouldn't give the guy the money to build the wall because why? Capital didn't want them to build no wall. Capital does not want to make it more difficult for people to get over here. They want it to be easier for people to get over here. Right? So that's what you got to understand. Think about in your area, how are people being developed to be competitive for the future? And if you can't figure out what's going on, maybe you and your people need to build something. But if y'all just sit around and wait and look and hope that one day somebody's going to show up and they're going to solve the problem, I doubt that happens because most of the time those people are thinking about themselves and what situation they got going on. So we're going to read the comments, man. We're going to get up on out of here because, like I said, I don't want to be here too late because it's an impromptu live stream. So, Ray Gun, man, I appreciate the $2 super chat, man. Big up to East Atlanta. So, Black American television news and information, I believe the South will rise again. I mean, the Southeast is doing real well right now, but it doesn't mean it'll be doing real well in 30 years, right? But what we're going to see in the Southeast is definitely you're going to see a demographic change. You're seeing it in Georgia. Right? Georgia, in 15, 20 years, half the state may be Latino or Hispanic, however they want to call it. So you're going to see a big, big demographic change. And I remember when pretty much all the Latinos was out there in Gainesville. They're literally right now inside the metro. And you didn't see that 5, 6 years ago because they just keep coming over here. Because why? They do all the work. They do all the construction. They do all the, any kind of remodeling, anything dealing with somebody putting their hands on like a hammer or something like that. It's done by Latinos. You always see them riding around. There's a certain part of Cobb County that they live in, you can tell they live there because everybody got a truck. Then when you go over this one road and it's a more Anglo part of the city, everybody got like SUVs. But when you in their section, everybody got trucks. It's like 4 trucks in the yard. And don't nobody live by themselves. I ain't met a Mexican live by themselves in my life. I don't even think they're allowed to do that. They always got multiple of them in one house. That's just how they live their life because that's how they live in Mexico. So I think the South will rise, but I don't think the South will rise based on black and white people. I think it'll rise based on immigrants coming over here and they being so productive. That's what brings up the region. But I appreciate the comment. So Miss Islam, what's going on with it? Reese, what's going on with it? Stay ready. What's up with it? Miss Lady L, how you doing? Erica, how you doing? Brandy, how you doing? Yeah, hit the like button. GC, what's up with it? So Erica says those black people flooding Houston and Dallas, but definitely Hispanic. Yeah, they are. They all flooding Houston and Dallas. I heard Houston's getting a lot more expensive. I don't know because I don't live there anymore. Houston can hold, I know you know Erica because you're from Texas. The metro can hold a lot of people. It can hold a lot of people. It's already holding a lot of people. But when I was in Houston, I was surprised how many Hispanic people were there. Because where I'm from, you don't see a lot of Hispanics. It's Hispanics in Orlando now. When I was growing up, there was very little to none. They was all in Apopka. because they worked agriculture in Apopka. This north is north of Orlando. When I lived in Tampa, most of the Hispanics was in Plant City because they worked agriculture. So I lived in Atlanta. You very rarely saw any Hispanics. Just didn't see them. Moved to Texas, they everywhere. Because, Houston is right by Mexico. So that's all you saw was Mexicans. It was an area, especially Southwest Houston. You thought you was in Mexico. I mean, they everywhere. Everywhere. And it's like that until you get to like almost I-10. And then it flips over. But Southwest is like, it's almost like you're in Mexico. And then I forgot the name of that place. I think it's called Pasadena, which is east of the city. That's almost like you're in Mexico, coming off to Sam Houston. So they deep. I mean, they deep. Houston, a cartel city too. So that's a whole nother conversation. What's up with it, Katrina? She said, because we Americans are birthing them, definitely. And the birth rate's down across the board. I think because it's too expensive to have children. I really do. I don't think there's anything they can do about that. I just think it's too expensive to have children right now. So unless you got a lot of money, I think people are really responsible people are reconsidering having children. Yeah, so that's a good word. Inundated. Yeah, inundated. I need to get on top of my vocabulary. I probably need to read more books with that type of stuff in it. So specifically, in is a specialized knowledge, definitely. Definitely. So Katrina says the Texas National Guard is supporting border operations. I feel you. Yeah, one guy, they've always been given that trope. We're gonna put the troops on the border. I don't even know if that's legal. I don't know if you can put active U.S. military, not National Guard, but I don't know if maybe you can, but I don't know if Congress would give somebody money to do that. Right? I don't think you can do that through executive order. You may be able to. I don't know. I'm not a constitutional scholar. I don't think you can put troops on the border, but it won't happen anyway. They're not going to stop nobody from coming over here. Katrina says, back in early 2000, my school dean talked about how Hispanics were going to overtake other immigrants. Yeah, definitely. I mean, Dr. Claus been talking about this for like 40 years, right? He's been talking about this for 40 years. So I just think, especially like where you're at, the West Coast, those regions at one time were all Hispanic, and they got pushed out because of the expansion of the United States. So it's just a demographic change. They just all coming back. What's unusual to see them in this part of the world, this part of the country where I'm at in the Southeast, but they're everywhere now. They're just everywhere. It's nothing you can do about it either. I've told people years ago, there's not a lot of places. Most white people don't even live by black people. Like most white people don't see black people all day. There's very few places you can go in America and you're going to see at least one Hispanic. Right? So I just think black people, because we're so overrepresented in media, we think like we're everywhere. Most white people don't see black people at all. They don't. That's why I don't listen to them talk about black folks, because they don't know what they're talking about, because they don't see black folks. They just know what they learn on the internet. But there's very few places you can go to in America and you're not going to run into some Hispanics. You can go way up to Maine and Hispanics up there. Right? You can go to Iowa and Wyoming. It's Hispanics out there working. They're everywhere. I mean, it's just ridiculous. They're everywhere. I'm from Orlando. A third of the metro area is Hispanic. It wasn't like that when I was growing up, but it is now. They're everywhere. And they have more children on average than everybody else. And they have less children than they had 20 years ago. But they still have more children on average than everybody else. So Miss Coca B says, I didn't know, not slave owners. You had to own 20 or more slaves. You were exempt. So owning one wasn't enough. But if you own 20 or more, that whole system was about protecting the wealthy. So if you own 20 or more, you was exempt. You didn't have to fight. Right? So Sunflower says, you definitely see that attitude of Tallahassee, other parts of North Florida. You haven't spent a lot of time in Tallahassee. I didn't want to go there because it was too small. Right? I didn't want to go to school in a real small city. That's just not my thing. So that's why I went to Tampa. It's not the biggest city in the world, but it's bigger than Gainesville. It's definitely bigger than Tallahassee. But I know the Gainesville mentality. I'm from Florida. And so the same thing that you saw in that dock in Alabama, that's their mentality. You know, they just think they're better than everybody else, right? And it's weird. I don't even want to be around it. Thing about me is that I don't have a problem somebody being my enemy because I'm just not gonna function with you, right? I'm not gonna go. We just not gonna function. We just would never deal with each other. So that's what I prefer to do. I'm not a cool by y'all person, but I'm also not a person to where I always wanted to be a beef in real life. That's just not my thing because it caused too much trouble. So if you don't like me and I don't like you, we just don't have to deal with each other, right? So I'm gonna just try to avoid you. You try to avoid me. So that's why I didn't want to go to Gainesville because I'm not gonna deal with that stuff. So Erica says a Venezuelan Cuban swamp in Georgia. My neighbor little left Georgia said there's a ton of Venezuelans there. He's a Venezuelan. I believe you. It's a ton of Venezuelans and Brazilians in Orlando. They left. Miami's starting to get too expensive for them. So they're everywhere. You know, it's just that's just what it is. They're everywhere. Second highest state for black people is Texas after New York. It's wild. Yeah, Texas got the space. I just want to see if anybody's ever going to live outside of that triangle. But Texas got the space. You know, Houston, the way Houston's built out with those highways, they probably could do another 2 million people, to be real with you. The way they built that highway system out is so expansive. Yeah, they probably could do another 2 million people. Just got to be ready to drive. 6'6" Goddess. There's a Spanish speaker mall out here in Atlanta Plaza Fiesta. Okay, I need to go check that out. So Ollie says, old attitude killed the Tampa Orlando light rail trying to appeal as the Tea Party that's long gone. I believe you. Yeah, they've been trying, you know, I believe you. I really do. So, you know, it is what it is. People standing in the way of progress is the weirdest thing in the world to me. But I think they don't have anything left to hold on to. So they just try to stand in the way of progress. And that's a big thing that we see down south is that people will stand in the way of money to keep something going that don't make anybody any money. And they claim it's just weird. It's like the weirdest thing in the world. That in this like conservative hypocrisy, you know, while behind closed doors, they doing you know, black breeding and all kind of weird stuff. Is just why I just don't really deal with none of these folks, man. Like I said, I just stay away from them because I can't do it. I can't do it with them. But, you know, other people can. They running over there to be with them. So God bless them. Erica Williams, Venezuelans going into Georgia heavy. Co-workers slowly bringing the entire Venezuelan family here. Okay. The Venezuelans, they coming through. Erica Williams, classic clown, smartphone money. Those old attitudes won't work. I meet Texans who own no house and no land, but beating chest about Texas. I just look at them and laugh. Yeah, I feel you. It is what it is. K smartphone. I'm sorry. Business talk with K, $5. Great stream, Diamond Damon. I appreciate the super chat. So Ebony from Detroit. I'm 40. Parents and grandparents work for GM. Used to be over 30 plants in metro area. Under 5 GM plants. Certain cities like Pontiac look like ghost towns. Yeah, Miss Ebony. And so, like, I know people from the Midwest, I call them Rust Belt cities. And they have negative things to say about, like, the South. And I just really think they should consider cities like Detroit, Cleveland, that was just really based on manufacturing and organized labor. We've seen how quickly they can pull those factories out of there. So you look at, like, Flint, Saginaw, Detroit, Cleveland, and probably a lot of other cities in the Midwest that I don't know about. You know, when you build everything around semi-skilled and even sometimes unskilled labor, and people aren't thinking about like what's next, is something I tell especially black parents about. Just because you got this stage, you got to be preparing your children for what's coming after that. Because these people, capital will pull out in a minute. Once they think they got a better deal somewhere else, they're gone and they never tell you about it. And so what we saw with Detroit, places like that, is that once they started to deindustrialize the area, the leadership didn't have anything to tell their people what was next. They just were cool managing those people in those particular areas. And so the areas went down and nobody was like, okay, this is what's next. That's why I'm a big fan of Erica with the tech, right? Because it got to be something next, right? Than just, okay, well, we used to do manufacturing. Now that's gone. Now what are we going to do? Well, we going to sell drugs. No, you got to come up with something better than that. So that's definitely something that you see in Pontiac, Saginaw, definitely Flint, Detroit. Once they pulled that manufacturing out, it was a wrap. But you see that with any area, in my opinion, where the biggest employer is going to be a manufacturer. We're seeing that in places like Alabama, but you also see that in Georgia. You can never get too comfortable with that, because if they think they got a better deal somewhere else, they're gone. And they don't care about, and then the whole economy of that particular area goes under, because that was the biggest economic driver for that area. That's why this guy tripping with Disney. Disney employs 70,000 people in Central Florida. If they ever decide this don't work, it's over. You know, so I don't understand why like you would do that. But like I say, he not putting business first. He putting foolishness first. Gas station on Windy Hill off Carl Parkway at 6 a.m. number of Spanish men in work trucks. Yeah, they stay in the truck or a van with some rugs in it, with some carpet. Ray Gunn said, the football analogy brought it home. Economic warfare is real. Hope my people can lock in. Yeah, the ones that can will. Whitney says, yup, Oklahoma too. All right, I ain't never been to Oklahoma. I might need to follow through that one time. Somebody told me about Oklahoma City. I was like, what the hell is in Oklahoma City for me to even go there? Right? I can't even tell you what's there. But big up to Oklahoma, though. So Erica Williams, Classic Clown, smartphone money. Man, all those folks in Miami moved to that panhandle area because it's cheap and can build. Yeah, Miami's losing people because of expenses. So, you know, Miami going to be a place for the super rich. Because you still got the Brazilians coming over, Erica, and they putting $3 million cash on a condo. So Miami just going to be a place for the super rich, you know. And Miami really can't support a lot of population anyway, because it's going to flood. So they needed to get half them people out of there anyway. Right? So they need to get people. People need to move to meet up to North Florida. Everybody want to live in Central Florida down south. We don't have the land. Somebody, them people need to move up north. Right? And then you'll see a big demographic change, because as the property values start to go up, a lot of them poor Anglos going to have to get up on out of there, because they ain't going to be able to afford to live down there no more. So Anthony says, my wife and I have discussed this for years. The U.S. blew a golden opportunity to really dominate the commercial sphere by precluding black folk from freely participating in various capacities. Yeah, you know, when you got to sell to your voters, man, that you're going to give everything to them and deny black folks, you got to do that type of stuff. Just like when they did the New Deal and they cut black people out of the New Deal. Because they built this system, like I said before, on teaching white men that you're the best thing since sliced bread. Everybody's got to be underneath you. So you got to keep hammering that point home to get them on your side, because that's their paradigm. And they can't accept, outside of sports, they can't accept that I'm not the best at everything. They just can't. You know, so that's just the reality. They convince black people of the same thing too. So they now program themselves that. It's just weird, but it's programming. So it works. So Arizona's growing as well. I feel you. I heard Phoenix is blowing up. You know, you got to know how to deal with that heat. Erica says 20% of all whites are 65 years and older. Man, these are the last two Republican possible elections. Erica, I think if the Republican Party, I don't think the two-party system is going anywhere. I don't think they're ever going to give up power. I think we're going to, until America is over with, we're going to have these two parties. These are two big gangs, right? They like 60 Crip times 5,000. For people that know who the 60s are. They're like 60 Crip times 5,000. I'm not promoting 60 Crip. I'm just saying the scale of these people is just on another level. I think they can get their momentum back. They have to get off of the old narrative, because it's not going to matter in 20 years anyway. But I think they're reluctant, because I think the older generation, in my opinion, from my understanding, in national elections, they do the majority of voting. So I think in their mind, they can get cheap wins by appealing to that old narrative. The problem is that they got to start thinking about their transitions and their shifts, because in 10, 15 years, it ain't going to matter anyway. Them people not going to be here, you know? So I think they need to figure out what their shift is going to be. And I thought that they were doing it when Rubio was running. I think not George Bush, Jeb Bush's son, I believe, was trying to get into politics. I thought the Republicans was gonna come with this big Hispanic push, but it's like they dropped the ball on that. And so I don't know how they get momentum back, but they will have to figure something out in this demographic shift to where you're going to have whole states where pretty much almost a third of the population is going to be Hispanic, and they're not going to be like white Cubans, right? Because different Hispanic groups have different perspectives on stuff, right? So, but they got to figure something out. But I don't think they're going anywhere. They're not going to give that up. You know, they tried the Tea Party and the Republican Party marginalized them so they could get back in position. It was real weird how that went. That's when I realized these people ain't going nowhere. UWA President Sean Fair is gassing these workers with promises of 32-hour work weeks and other concessions while the big three are playing their move to other state countries. Most definitely, Miss Phoenix. You know, I'm pro-labor, right? I'm very much pro-labor. I'm pro-organized labor. But there got to be a balance between labor and capital, because the way this world works, if they don't like the business environment, they'll just move. They'll go somewhere else. Because the United States, and this is something that both sides of the political party had with Trump, is they don't want to create protectionism to make it bad for business to do business outside of the United States, to where like we'll tax you so much if you bring your products in from overseas to where you might as well put your business here. They're not going to do that. So it makes business sense to put your company somewhere else and just ship it all to the US. You know, let's talk about Apple. Apple doesn't really manufacture anything. They just outsource everything through Foxconn. They white label it and they bring it over here and they sell it, you know, because they can do that. Nobody will stop them from doing it. So Apple's never going to manufacture inside the United States ever. They'll move from China to Vietnam to Pakistan because they're not going to pay American workers, and they don't have to worry about organized labor because them Chinese people work you to death. You ain't gonna get no break. You just keep working. So I believe you. I wanted to talk to you, and we'll go and talk about it right now. The guy that did the UPS deal. Somebody said this on my Facebook page that Amazon needs to organize next. He wants to organize Amazon. That's his next move. So really his big move was to try to organize Amazon. So I don't know if Amazon can replace all their logistics workers, but they may be able to. You never know. But that's supposed to be his next play after the UPS deal. So Erica says St. Louis, Baltimore, possible Ohio, Michigan, locked into that old mindset. These areas are pressed. Definitely, B-Mall's on a whole nother trip. St. Louis too. But I just think, Erica, a lot of these cities that everything was based around manufacturing, they just never transitioned. And one thing I was talking to somebody the other day is that in a lot of these cities, the quote unquote, I don't know what you want to call them, liberal or left, have done a horrendous job of managing those environments. I mean, that's why I say it's something else. There's something going on behind the surface, because it's too easy to go get a $2 million federal grant and to just do tech training instead of just having everybody just sit in those areas with no work. Like, it don't even make no sense, but that's just what they're doing. They've done a terrible job managing those areas. So U-Haul says 80,000 have already fled Miami. I feel you. Miami, one of the biggest metros in the Miami and Atlanta, the biggest metros in the Southeast. So it's a lot more population they could bleed off and it won't impact them. Because Miami used to be a two-horse town before everybody started coming down. It used to be nothing in Miami. Miami used to be a retirement city. That's really what it's built for. It really can't support that population. It really can't, but they made it supported by just draining those swamps and putting houses there. So Erica says they're going to fill those prisons with misbehaving Hispanics. Yeah, they already doing that now, but they're going to put some more in them. They got good tacos at Plaza Fiesta. Okay, I feel you. I might need to follow through there, see what they're talking about. So Sean says we got ghost towns in the north because factories and coal mine closed down. Yeah, I mean, it's called deindustrialization. I'm not telling you that like you don't know it. I'm telling the audience that it's just deindustrialization. They did the same thing to the UK. You know, the game, and people that run businesses, and I'm not saying you don't, but people that run businesses know this. You got to always be watching costs. You know, you got to be. I'm doing something right now. I had to tell people, hey, this is what I'm willing to pay. I don't want it to go too much over that, because at the end of the day, if it don't make money, it don't make sense. Now I'm willing to lose a little bit of money on this deal so I can learn how to do it the right way to make money on future deals. But I can't lose money on every deal. I go out of business. So, I mean, is a balance between that and treating people properly. So I don't never look to dog nobody just to make money. But, you know, people, that's why I say people that promote this free market stuff, that means no manufacturing inside the United States if we really doing real free markets. Because why would I do any businesses here if I can go overseas and do it cheaper and make more money like Apple and bring it over here and put a margin on top of it? And Apple got some of the healthiest margins in any computer hardware business. Because why? It get made so cheap and they just come over here and they just put like 300% on top of it. Same thing with Nike. Nike makes them shoes for like $5. Got people paying $300-$400 for shoes. Amiki Okele, appreciate a $4 super chat. Venezuela and the Carolinas. Okay, Venezuelans everywhere. How many people are there in Venezuela for them to be spread out like that? So Erica says, I know some Hispanic delivery drivers shocked to live alone in a 2-bedroom delivering my stuff. They were shocked. Yeah, like I said, I ain't never seen a Mexican person live by themselves. I don't think they able to do it. I think like it's a big cultural no-no for them to live by themselves. I just never seen it happen ever. I'm talking about even the ones that got money don't live by themselves. They don't. They'll buy a big old house and put their whole family in it. They ain't not going to live by themselves. They don't believe in that. We believe in that type of stuff, but they don't believe in that. If one come up and got it going good, he go get a big old house or she go get a big old house and everybody move in with them. They're not going to live by themselves. They don't believe in that. Right? I just think that's so against their culture. They also built them big compounds. I've seen a lot of that in Texas. They doing a little bit of that in Orlando now, where they put a big wall around everything. They don't have no open yards like we do down here. They build a compound so they can control their situation. So everything inside the compound, they got control of it. Because, you know, in Mexico, anything can happen. So you got to be on point. U-Haul says Detroit auto industry equals West Virginia coal country. Yeah, I feel you. But I think coal gonna last. I think coal will last longer than the auto industry because the coal is actually in the ground. With auto, we can build cars anywhere. They're building cars in Mexico right now. With the coal, at least it's in the ground. Same thing with oil. At least it's in the ground. It's fixed to the location. With auto, you can do that anywhere. Right? They're getting ready to do that in China. Erica says, I had to learn Spanish this year. I had 3 ladies talking to me and I needed help. Yeah, that'd be a good thing if you picked it up and get fluent. Because if I lived in Miami, I would definitely know Spanish fluently. I know a little bit. I can learn. I know what people are saying. I just can't necessarily talk back to them, but I know what they're saying. What helped me was listening to a lot of I forgot that Mexican Spanish channel. I used to watch that when I had cable. I listened to a lot of that. That's what helped me really understand what they were saying. Ebony says the Detroit residents are stuck. 3 generations made upper class income, couldn't read. Now local millennials don't know what to do. They never prepare. Yeah, I mean, I blame their leadership though, because leadership should come in and tell you like we're having an economic change, and so we need to prepare you for the change. You know, I don't know why I would be in political leadership, and I know that the winds are changing, and I'm not telling my people that they're changing. I'm just sitting back, just acting like everything is everything. I don't get that, but I think, like I said, there's something going on behind the scenes to where they do this type of stuff and they never sound the alarm. Right. But, you know, so that's why, you know, one of the reasons why I'm not in those positions, because I don't understand what's really going on. So you went to Oak Hill, West Virginia. You play ball. I never seen poverty on that level, talking dirty faces, third world. I believe you. You see a lot of it if you go to parts of the Southeast. You know, it's a big lie that like black people, the poorest people in the world, man, please. It's place in Florida, man, where it's white cities, man, and the whole city doing crystal meth. It's crazy. See what I'm saying? So but that don't get white viewers to talk about the type of stuff. Now you got one brother in Arizona. He talks about a lot about poverty in Arizona, but there's not like a racial component to it. It's all just economic. So he don't really cater to none of that stuff. It's just all economic stuff. But he does poverty in Arizona. It's a really good channel too. It's very unfortunate for a lot of those people. Sean just says maybe Hispanics can save the Republican Party. I think they might have to. I think Hispanics gonna save everybody from on the political side, because there's gonna just be so many over here. You know, you gotta figure out how to get along with some of them. So maybe the black community will flip for the Republican Party. So who do you define as a black community? And the question is, what's their ask? So Ms. Coco B says, I think the Democratic Party will be untouchable in the near future. It's a bit concerning. Yeah, I don't see that happening. But, you know, everybody got their own opinion, right? Two-party system is here for a reason. They gonna seesaw it. You know, they're gonna seesaw it back and forth. They're gonna keep their position, but they're gonna seesaw the person they put in front of us. But they're gonna keep their spot. They're not gonna go nowhere. They're making too much money. So Erica says they selling men, Asian, Latinos, or Republican Party is going to be tough. These folks mostly work and don't vote. Yeah, they got to get the word out. But the problem with, in my opinion, with conservative media is they don't go after the people that actually matter. You know, because everybody's just trying to make money. There's really no political organizing. You know, so but. You know, they looking for donations. So it is what it is. But there's no political organizing on their side. You know, you don't, in my opinion, you don't politically organize talking to people that already agree with you. That's how you make money and sell stuff, but you don't politically, you talk to people that don't agree with you, but they won't do that. You know, that's why you can't find them anywhere in the real world. They be at colleges, but they don't vote. So I don't know why they at school, colleges. They need to be with people that's actually going to cast a vote. So I agree with you. But I think where the political thing is going, I think they will have success, because I think people are going to be so disgusted with the other side. So that they don't have a choice but to go with the other side. And I just think that's how they play it. You're going to either be so disgusted with one side, you're going to just go to the other side. Because there's really no, they make it to where it's almost impossible to be a moderate these days. It's just weird. That's just, we in a weird era. Right here in Georgetown, found a mall, millions of construction for 7 years. One of the last city council members died. Then boom, flooded into money. Yeah, I feel you. The Rust Belt towns have horror stories from grandparents. I know Chicago came down and said y'all went in down here. I feel you. Yeah. It was good while it lasted. A lot of times with us, by the time we figure something else out, it's an economic decline. And for a lot of, not all, but for a lot of Black people, by the time they moved to the Midwest and started getting involved in their manufacturing, and if you really look at it, it was already starting to decline. Because they really decided, capital really decided to deindustrialize the Midwest. They really decided that in the late 60s, early 70s. It just didn't really hit to the 80s, because it's a gradual process. They got to find their new locations. They got to build capacity. They got to get those locations running as good as the old locations. And then now they're ready to make their full switch. So you look at like Rivian. Rivian's supposed to have a factory built in 2024. Then it's going to take them so many years to get the full capacity out here in Georgia. So it's a process. But a lot of us, we saw this happen. We went to the West Coast. A lot of Black people went to the West Coast post-World War II. Then they started deindustrializing Southern California like in the 60s and the 70s. But it didn't really hit hard to the 80s. And then we get stuck places because we don't get new information around the area. So as they start to deindustrialize, if that's the proper term, in my opinion, we get stuck in these areas and everybody else moves on. Right? And then we get stuck there, and then it gets real bad, and then you can't get out. Because when Bing, I think that's the name of the guy that used to play for the Pistons, that was the mayor of Detroit. When they finally allowed him to become mayor of Detroit, I mean, Detroit has such a low tax base, they didn't even have running water in the city in a lot of places. There was nothing left for him to do. Like, he couldn't manage a city with no tax base. So he can't do anything. So that's the problem, is that I have an issue with the people that are so invested in not letting us know, like, okay, this is where the game is going, and we need to start positioning ourselves for that, as opposed to just acting like everything's everything and telling us everybody's a racist. Of course they're racist. So now we've confirmed that they're racist. Now what we gonna do? I know Tommy Tuberville, he ain't, you know, he whatever. So okay, now we know Tommy Tuberville is whatever. Now what we gonna do? Because we still gotta have something going. We just can't focus on Tommy Tuberville. So that's what I think. That's why I fall out with a lot of these people. They coming at me with the same stuff over and over again. It's not gonna help me. Like, what information do you have for me that's gonna help me, benefit me, instead of telling me how bad them people over there is? I don't want to hear that all day. But that's what make me different. Yeah, it was Telemundo. I used to watch a lot of Telemundo. A lot. That's how I learned it. Because I had to hear it a lot. You know, because I didn't have anybody to speak it to me. So I had to hear it. And once I heard it all the time, I started to pick it up. So Gary Vee said, once the internet hit, white men lost control. It's wide open. Yeah. On the ground level, I would say that. And another thing is, I just think there's so many ways to make money now. It's just so many possibilities. I think I couldn't imagine 20 years ago, I couldn't imagine the way you can make money now. I could have never believed like it to be this easy. You couldn't imagine it. And I think it's going to be even easier 20 years in the future. I just think people got to be up to speed with like what's going on. They got to start changing their conversation. I think this is one of the reasons why they try to keep our conversation on such a low level, so we don't take advantage of a lot of this stuff, right? Because a lot of people I speak to, even the quote unquote ones that are educated, it's just like the conversation is just like, it's like sixth grade. I'm like, bro, you got to start talking about something different. But that's all that's put in front of their face all the time. That's why I don't watch TV. So Johnny Cadre, I would encourage you to figure out what a solution is to that problem, and then go do that. So Eric Classy Climb Smart from Money said the Republicans need an Obama Republican star. I thought Rubio was going to be that guy, but for some reason they didn't want Rubio. And the Cubans in Miami didn't tell them, if y'all don't deal with Rubio, we're going to have a problem. They didn't stand up for Rubio. I thought Rubio was going to be that guy, but it just didn't happen that way. But you couldn't have told me I thought Rubio was going to be president. Right? But he needed his people to stand up for him, but that hasn't happened. But they'll find one. It's not going to be Vivek though. Guarantee you that. That's not going to happen. Vivek just trying to get him a platform deal. He think nobody don't see that. South Carolina got 55% black home ownership as DeSoto, Texas. People from North must buy homes as soon as they move south. Good deal for South Carolina. I still got family out there. They on the East Coast though. I wanted to see DeSoto when I was in Texas, but I just never made it up there because I was low-key going to try to stay out there. So Erica says, Amazon will always find young black people and Latino people who short on money. I believe you. They always going to be out here. They always going to be out here. Amazon will be working people hard though, man. So big up to everybody that work for them because they be working people hard. So Ebony, appreciate the $4.99 super chat. Gainfully employed. I can see the writing on the wall. My position would take a drastic pay cut in the next 18 to 36 months of my contract expire. Well, big up for you having the foresight to see that. Cherie says Vivek on a publicity too. Yeah, he's looking for a platform deal. He'll get one too. You know, but ain't no way in the world somebody gonna be president of the United States at 37 years old. Like that's not even reasonable. You know, that's like, but it sounds good. He knows that we're in an era where if you just tell people what they want to hear, they'll take to you. So he's just figured that out. But like, you're going to be president at 37. Come on, man. Stop it. And you think you're going to sit across the table with some of these world leaders who are like, they really are who they are. They're not acting at all. Like Putin's not acting. There's no act there. That guy really is who you think he is. Man, he probably wouldn't even talk to Vivek. If he do talk to him, he gonna clown him because he's gonna be like, man, you're a weenie, dude. Like, I'm really that dude. So yeah, he'll have issues. The dude in China, come on, man. These people really made their name in real world, like for real, for real. That's one thing I can say about the guy that they trying to figure out, put a million cases on the dude. I don't, he really was a real person in the real world. It wasn't no internet. These internet dudes are something different, but that's just the era we living in. So Rubio didn't have enough game, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, he played himself with how he managed a lot of stuff. I don't know. He took what they do with these guys is they just essentially micromanage your situation. And so what I think his team told him he needed to do was exactly what he did. The problem is that it didn't go to where they said it was going to go. I don't think that guy has an original idea in his head. I don't. But the mistake he made, and this is not a political show, but we can talk about organizational structure. He should have never put his name in the Disney situation. He should have let the Florida legislature handle that, because that's why you got them there. So you gerrymandered everybody to make the state go Republican. You got your people in position, let your people do their job. But because he's trying to be another version of Trump, let me put my face and my name in this situation and, try to get some publicity off of it. And now it came back to bite him. But he should have never done that. But I think his team told him to do that. You want to be the face of this. He should have never done that. I don't know what they thought was going to come out of that. You're dealing with a corporation that does like $85 billion a year in revenue. They own like 40 acres of commercial real estate. They're not going anywhere. And what he said during an interview with Megyn Kelly, who believes that Jesus is an Anglo-Saxon. Those are words. But I like I said, Anglo-Saxon men are the top dog in their world. So Jesus got to be an Anglo-Saxon based on her ideology. So I don't argue with her ideology. I get it. He said that they violated their fiduciary duty. I forgot what he said. He said like they violated their fiduciary duty as a company when they did something. And my question was, you're the governor of the state of Florida. Who are you to come in and determine that they violated their fiduciary duty? You're not like a judge. But they got him down that rabbit hole. So now he got to come up with an explanation of why he did what he did. Like, it just was stupid. But he got bad counsel. And sometimes that happens. So unfortunately for him, it didn't go the way he wanted to go. At least he's still governor. And he's young enough to where he can get another go at it. Because from a national political standpoint, he's a kid. He's like 44 years old. On a national level, he's a child. So, 4 to 8 years, you get another run at it. And now he knows what not to do. You don't get into a beef with a company in your state that employs 70,000 people. Like, it doesn't make any sense to do that. But it got good internet publicity, but it doesn't make good political sense, because Disney's going to be in Florida when we're all gone. They're still going to be there. So the Republican Party of Florida still has to function in the state of Florida with Disney. So that's why it didn't make any sense to do that. Robots going to replace Amazon workers. Eventually it will. Walmart's using robots at their distribution center to do like the heavy freight. So eventually they will, but it's going to be a process. So Sasha says, I work in automotive in Michigan. I'm trying to find my exit. You'll find it. Hit up Erica, one of them tech classes. You'll find it. So appreciate everybody for coming through. It's 11:09 on the East Coast. We're going to go ahead and take it in. But I want to really encourage you. Make sure you don't get caught up in a bunch of BS that's going to impact your situation negatively. And these narratives, make sure they kind of benefit what you're trying to do in the world. Because a lot of times people are caught up in stuff. You see a lot of this on the internet. And if you do any type of critical analysis of it, it don't really make a lot of sense. But it just sounds good on the television. Just like, Jesus is an Anglo-Saxon. Well, you can't find any historical references to support that. But based on her ideology, Jesus has to be an Anglo. So if you buy into that, all for it. 2, if somebody's my enemy, I don't waste no time with them. Right? I don't antagonize them. I don't go back and forth with them. I've had real enemies in real life because of where I was from. It's not a big deal. I really like it. Right? So I'm not going to buy into the going back and forth. If we're enemies, if you state the fact that we're enemies, okay, it's understood. You stay over there, I stay over there. We keep it like that. I'm not going to use my energy and my productive energy trying to go back and forth. Really, I'm just going to separate myself from you. Right? I'm not a kumbaya person, but I'm not a fan of using productive energy to go back and forth with people, and they've determined that we're enemies. So I would encourage people to really examine how they're dealing with people that say that they're enemies. And then 3, make sure that the people around you are preparing you for the future. And if they're not, ask yourself, what is the future going to look like, and what do I need to be prepared for? Y'all have a good evening, man. Talk to y'all later.